I found two rabbits that were so hungry they would eat out of my hand. They were living in this field here. I was walking through. These two rabbits are actually so tame that they just come up to me and start eating. Hi, it's me. And I know these look like wild rabbits, but these guys are actually domestic rabbits. They're not your normal wild cottontail or jackrabbit. They're actually domestic rabbits that got loose. And this is their home territory. They escaped from a farm a long time ago, probably over a year ago. They've been surviving in the wild ever since. These rabbits are so friendly and tame. When I first saw them, they were so hungry, they would eat out of my hand. Now, you might think that feeding wild animals is bad, but they've been living in the wild for so long, they're pretty much used to it. They can hunt and forage for themselves. I didn't feel bad feeding them a little bit of extra food. In fact, I think it helps that I feed them because there is not a lot of food here in the wintertime. So when I show up with a little bag of food, they're usually pretty excited. There's a male and a female. The female is smaller and cuter in my opinion, and she's really friendly. She comes right up to me, eats out of my hand. The male is a little skittish, but he'll still come up to me and take food out of my hand. And if I toss some lettuce into the air, he'll actually jump up and grab it midair. Now, you might be wondering how I even found these rabbits in the first place. Well, a viewer sent me a message saying, "Hey, have you seen these rabbits around?" And then he sent me a couple pictures. And I could tell right away these were no ordinary wild rabbits. They looked too tame. He said he'd seen them hopping around his neighborhood. And he was concerned because they looked like they were getting ready to have babies, and he didn't want them having babies out in the cold. He was worried about their welfare. Well, I told him I knew exactly where they lived. We've been watching them for a few months now, and I think these rabbits are doing great. They're surviving well in the wild, even though it does get pretty cold here in the winter. They have each other for warmth, and they seem to be doing great. But again, I don't mind feeding them a little bit of extra food. So I went back to where I fed them last time, and sure enough, they were back in the exact same spot. I was able to capture both of them and bring them home. Here's the female. It's the smaller one. Look at her ears. Look at those beautiful eyes. They almost look like they're glowing. The male's a little bigger and a little darker, but look at these big feet. It's the biggest rabbit I've ever seen. I mean, look at this thing. They are a little bit skittish, but like I said, they're still very friendly. These rabbits were probably pets at some point. That's why they're so friendly and tame. They make great pets, but they need to be spayed or neutered. So I brought them to the vet today to get fixed. The female was a little more difficult, but the male was pretty chill. They gave them both the shots they need, and they were all set for the rest of their lives. As I'm making this video, they're sleeping in the back room. I put them in my office, and they just kind of looked around, then they curled up in a ball and went to sleep. It's amazing how tame these guys are. I bet they would do great in a home environment. Well, it's a little too cold here to let them go outside, so I'm going to keep them in my office for a couple days until it warms up. Then I'll bring them back to their home territory. If anybody wants these rabbits, I'll bring them to you. Otherwise, I'll just keep bringing them food and checking on them every once in a while. Now, I love animals, and I always love when people love animals as much as I do. But I have to admit, some of the stuff I see online makes me shake my head. People trying to befriend wild animals, trying to ride wild mustangs, hugging monkeys. All kinds of stuff that I think is dangerous and potentially harmful to both the animal and themselves. But this person did something I can get behind. A guy named Dan, who's an arborist, works in trees, decided to befriend this fawn. Every day he would bring it some water and some doe milk. And after a few weeks of doing this, the deer finally came around. It's so friendly now that it follows him around everywhere. I think that's awesome. This is a wild animal that knows that this human is its friend. And this is a great example of imprinting. When a baby animal sees another animal, usually its mother, right after it's born, it will imprint on that animal. It will consider that animal to be its mother. And that's what's happening here. Imprinting is a natural behavior that has been observed in many species, including ducks, geese, goats, and sheep. The young animal sees its mother soon after birth and then develops a strong bond with her. The mother provides food, warmth, and protection, and the young animal becomes imprinted on her. Imprinting can also occur with humans. If a human provides care for a young animal, the animal may become imprinted on the human and view her or him as a mother figure. This can happen through regular contact, such as feeding or grooming the animal, and that's what happened here. The deer imprinted on this man, and I know some people say, oh, it's just friendly. But no, it actually imprinted on this man. And this is a really unique bond between a human and a wild animal. It's something I can really appreciate. But speaking of animals that imprinted on humans, I think it's time for me to introduce you to my new best friend. You might be thinking it's one of the rabbits, but it's actually this little guy. This is a spotted skunk. It's probably the friendliest skunk you've ever seen. Skunks are normally nocturnal and shy, but this guy is neither. He loves being around people, and he's not afraid of anything. In fact, he's always trying to get attention, and the way he does that is by headbutting me. Trust me, it hurts. Now, I don't know if he considers me his mom, or if he's just trying to dominate me. Either way, I gotta give him some space. So if you want to say hi, this is the only chance you'll get.